Shadow of Auron. I tell you it was supposed to be a simple operation, but first you're probably wondering why a bunch of high schoolers broke into the most secure building in New Chicago. I'll admit it was my fault, but let's rewind a bit, shall we? I don't want to already have lost you. It started when we heard the trampling footsteps of the elite coming. Everyone began to panic. Well, when I say everyone, I mean me and my cat. Oh, and Toby. They had been looking for us for weeks, and it seemed they had eventually found our hideout. I tossed a bag of Fizz Crisps across the train compartment and stumbled out of bed, almost tripping over Trinity, my fat, great cat. Toby reached for the neon blaster by the doors and put a bar through the handles. "Let's go," he urged, cramming things into a backpack and swinging it across his shoulder. "You think?" I remarked as I stuffed my laptop into a leather briefcase to my right. It had once belonged to my father, and as I had no memory of him at all, it seemed to bring me closer to him, spiritually speaking. Because actual traveling cases were popular these days, but me and Toby would never have enough money for those. As we ran for the exits of the back of the abandoned wagon, a blast shook it from where we had originally been relaxing a nice Tuesday night with no responsibilities. You might be wondering it, so I'll just tell you before you ask. We don't go to school. They would never allow us anymore. Not after what they found out about us, what we really are. "Get up, punk!" barked Toby, hoisting me to my feet after being knocked off from the blast. "Darn," I mumbled, as I picked glass shards out of my hand. We make our way down the tracks, panting and wheezing as we try to keep unranged distance between us and the incoming elite. Momentarily distracted by a scampering rat, Trinity took to a run at our heels as we exited the subway and jumped the steps 3 by 3 into the cold, rainy street. New Chicago was gleaming in the moonlight. Signs blared everywhere, advertising new things that never seemed to come short of selling. Blinded by the amount of light, I almost got hit by a car that hovered a few inches from my face, and I swear it cut a few strands of my long brown hair. Just to tell you before, Toby insists all the time that I spend too much time in the spectrum mirror at the back of the train, or whatever, but that's just him being a dork, because he's never actually had a real girlfriend. Besides, there's nothing special about the clothes I was wearing today anyway. The jeans I had on were ripped in 3 different places, and the tee I had under my leather jacket was too small and was off-white with funky writing saying, "I heart hacking." See? He completely exaggerates about everything. But that was the least of my worries. I could start hearing the elite coming up the stairs behind us. Sirens began to blare as the copter came into view, its searchlight sweeping over the towering building that seemed to steer the dark clouds in the sky. "Let's go, Jace," repeated Toby harshly. I don't blame the guy, though. He had trouble with the elite before, and they had scarred him forever. Literally. He's got a brutal slash of Numborian blade across his blind eye. It kind of brings out the gangster look of his bald head and platinum earring he borrowed. But that's just... As I began to jog the puddle street, a second car almost hit me. Not my day. But as this one swerves to the right, the door at the back flickers out of view to grant us entry into the black VX model. A girl's head pops out into the view as she reaches out her hand towards me. "Get in!" she calls, her face beneath the massive purple hair lit by the red and blue light from the descending copter. "Camilla?" But there is no time to react to the situation as a voice booms through the speakers of the copter and the elite break through the tunnel exit, their blasters focused on us, blue energy beginning to surge through them. I went with the safer option. I take her hand and climb into the van just as the copter readies the turbo rockets. Toby scrambles in, firing a round of blasts and picking up Trinity as the door marshalizes it back into place to muffle the sound of pedestrians screaming at the blast from the incoming elite. "Let's go!" shouts Camilla to the driver in the front. With that, the van tore through the wet streets, narrowly missing shrieking people on the sidewalks as the copter and the two hoverbikes kept pace, firing turbos at every chance they got, whether the streets appeared vacant enough. After all, the elite weren't going to let a chance this great to catch half Aurons slip through their armored fingers. "What's going on?" I shout over the noise. "I'm kind of busy saving your butts at the moment," she calls back, opening the window as she drops a nitrogen cylinder back towards the speeding black hoverbikes. She turns back as a shattering explosion erupts behind them. "Questions later," she says, as if that closed the deal. As we are currently racing through the streets of New Chicago, frightened to death, I might add, I might as well tell you what I meant earlier on. Last year, me and Toby found out we were only half humans. At the medical checkup at Midstone High, I still managed to remember the look of terror on the nurse's face as she checked my blood scan in the waiting room. Her features went white as she ran out of the room yelling something. The elite had come moments later, but just before they reached the waiting room, a big kid with really short hair burst through the door and grabbed me by the sleeve. And that's how me and Toby met. A kid from 2 grades higher than me had fortunately got his scan just before me and had decided to hitch me onto his wild ride running from the government. I meant to thank him, of course, but I was too shocked about what I had heard about myself, and he loved being such a jerk around me that I just shut myself in my hacking most of the time. I did this and to try and get into bank accounts to get enough money for us to survive the months that went by. We did not always fight, of course. He had my back, and I had his. We both loved the same stuff of our old life, and once in a while we would have a good laugh about one thing or the other. I still remember crying at night, not wanting to believe in all this stuff about being half Auron, and anyway. The race of aliens that had invaded our planet 100 years ago had apparently left their DNA here. Then the scientists of TerraCorp had experimented on my and a few others' ancestors to see the results over a couple of years. But when they realized what we were capable of, TerraCorp joined the government to create a squad of Auron hunters to kill every last one of us. I have to admit it does explain why I've never known my parents, and that's why I had to stay in the orphanage all this time, but I'm sick of it. All of it, the running, hiding, running again, stealing, it's exhausting. I wish this had never come to me. Toby keeps talking about some cure of something. He says he's read it somewhere, but I don't believe the gorilla can actually read in the first place. The next thing we knew, we had reached the garage where Camila jumped out of the van and shut the gate behind us. "Won't they see us in this place?" Toby asks, looking concerned. "The place is coated in xanthium oxide. It will look like a rich manor of some sort," she stated plainly. "And honestly, I don't think they'd figure you'd have a place like this as a refuge," she added, raising an eyebrow at me. "We need to talk." She beckoned me towards a study or some sort at the back of the garage. "So," I started, "you are in so much trouble, Jason Miles." "Tell me about it," I say, scratching my head awkwardly. "It's nice to see you." "Don't start." She crossed over towards the corner of the room to a vending machine and came back with 2 bottles. "Sunday, the 12th, the day you left, and never said a word." "Camille, you know I would have stayed if I could. They came with guns. Toby got me out of there." "Your new best friend, huh?" "Toby is not my friend," I explained. "Besides, you wouldn't know how it felt." I threw the bottle to the floor, smashing it to bits. "Oh, to be on the run, heartbroken and broke?" Her temper had risen. "You, best of all, knew what my dad would have said if he found out I was dating a—" She stopped. "A monster," I finished for her. "Thanks, I needed this talk." "Jace," she called, but I had already left the room. Throwing a cloak over myself, I storm out of the garage. I do not know where I am heading. I do not care. "Oi, where do you think you're going off like that?" Toby shouts after me. "Are you nuts?" But I had already bent the corner of the street,